So now I'd like to ask our panelists up. I can see Shirley and Shijwade right here. Dawn, where are you, Dawn? There's Dawn and Ruth. Please choose. Well, it's a very uncomfortable sofa. I'm sorry about that. What we are going to do is I will give our panelists a very brief introduction. I am also going to ask them to give the 20-second best top line of themselves. We'll start with Shiju on the end and come back. Shijwade Kadri is the director for tech equity at the Aspen Aspen Institute and the Aspen Digital part of that, and is running essentially the biggest recommendation to come out of the ACT report was the Tech Accountability Coalition. So Shiju, could you model 30-second intro, because we're a little bit tight on time. 30 seconds.
I adore Una, and I will not be able to model that, but I will try. So Shijwade Kadri, my pronouns are she and her, based in Atlanta. I like to shout that out because West Coast people think, thank you. My wife is a native New Yorker, and she thinks the sun rises and sets on New York, and I like to remind her and Californians that other parts of the country exist. But I am the director of the Tech Accountability Coalition at the Aspen Institute. And I will try to give an umbrella about why it's relevant that I share some of my background. So I'm a lawyer. I have my master's in public health. I've done a lot of community organizing. I center, if we look at the PALM, that's equity and justice is kind of the way I was raised. My parents are from Nigeria and Trinidad, to whom much is given, much is expected. And that meant at home, in the community, et cetera. They were like, why do you want to do public interest law? You're going to be broke. And I was like, you told me to do this. I'm still broke, but it's okay. And the idea is that I have worked in many communities, always trying to seek this idea of equity and justice. And that has been as a public defender, as a policymaker. I have worked in tech. I have my own consulting practice, and in every single space I'm in, it is the same communities impacted by the same challenges. And what I love about leading the Tech Accountability Coalition is that the ACT report was about operationalizing DEI. DEI for me is just civil rights work. It is just how we connect with each other. As a lawyer, it is how the law is used either to suppress us. As a Black queer woman, I was not allowed to exist in the law, and yet here I am. My marriage and my children technically don't exist in the law, and yet here we are, right? So the law is just one tool that can either lag behind or be used to advance. So like hearing what you had to say, Kay, around how the law is catching up to just our own existence is exciting. Yet it should not limit the ambition and innovation that we can offer into this space. And so the Tech Accountability Coalition is meant to bring together tech companies just as an opportunity for change. If this were 20 years ago, I always say it could have been media. In the future, it's going to be something new that my kids have invented as the sort of train that will drive this forward. But tech companies have incredible socio-political power, tons of money, tons of people working in them. Over 12 million people work in tech in the US alone. And so it's bringing coalitions of companies together to say, what if we actually worked on these issues together, right? And I know that means getting folks to sign NDAs to come into spaces like this, right? Challenging people on the proprietary nature of their individual tech company work and realizing that civil rights work is not proprietary. No one person or group or identity owns this idea of how we build equity inclusion into a space. But what we all have clear access to is diversifying the people in the room, the experiences that they bring into the space, the identities, the stories they tell, and seeding them with true inclusion. That means listening to, humbling yourself to offer those other perspectives power. And then how do we actually build this equitable future that none of us has yet seen, but hope to be able to build together?
Well, mic drop, round of applause, please. So thank you so much, Shiju, for not taking a blind bit of notice of what I asked. I do appreciate your genius nonetheless, and we could not have lived without that. This was going to be a panel discussion, but maybe it'll just be 5 minutes each at the beginning.
I'm sorry.
So on that note, no, it was beautiful. What you said was beautiful and very important. On that note, if we can now move to Ruth Farmer. I do want to say that Ruth, who is CEO and co-founder of the Last Mile Education Fund, which helps get, at the beginning, it was predominantly African-American and Hispanic undergraduates in CS degrees who are at the last mile of completing their CS course, who couldn't do so because they didn't have the money for the rent or the other things that all the other kids touched by affluence with the bank of mum and dad don't even think about once. And then they're like, oh, look, I got here just all on my own. Aren't I clever? No. So Ruth has done more than virtually anyone I know to actually, in practical terms, help dismantle the myth of meritocracy and, in fact, do something to make it real. Ruth, there's no point in asking you for your 30 seconds. Give us whatever you're going to give us. Over to you.
I know she stole my, I don't, is my mic on? Okay,
Yes.
so she took some of that. So I'm a farmer. I am this term was coined by my colleague Kumar Garg at the White House, a tech inclusion entrepreneur. So I spend a lot of time in lots of different spaces thinking about like intractable things that need to be fixed to get the system to work for everybody. And my latest thing is the Last Mile Education Fund, because I discovered literally a young woman I've been watching since she was a senior in high school, who nearly canceled an internship at a big bank because she could not afford bus fare from Mississippi to North Carolina. And today she's a vice president of information security at that bank, a mother, a homeowner, and co-founder of the Last Mile Education Fund, along with her professor, Dr. Sarah Lee. And I lead a team of now 12 people who work every day to make sure low-income students have food, gas, dental work, the security to like go to an internship and know that they don't have to sleep in their car to get there, whatever it takes, because we have far too much talent being left behind over trivial amounts of money. And I'll tell you, we have given more than $5 million. Our average grant is $1,100. It does not take much money to get a student at this stage over the finish line. The ROI is in 6 to 18 months. I also have great ideas on how to solve the student debt crisis, if anyone wants to talk about that. And I can't help myself with little side hustles, so love to talk to anybody who wants to think about how to permanently fix K-12 CS teacher preparation. Happy to talk about that, many other things. And I'll turn it over to Dawn.
Okay, well, first of all, yeah, a round of applause for Ruth. And I want to thank Dawn Jones for being with us today. Dawn is the Chief Diversity Officer at Intel. Now, I came to Snap from Google. When I went to Google, I was like, oh, the first company to publish their DEI data. Don't ask why, but they did. But in fact, no, it wasn't Google. It was actually Intel, who were the first. Google got the press, Intel did the work, and paved the path. I want to say also that one extraordinary thing Intel has done is to create, found, and lead the Global Alliance for Inclusion, which brings together between 10 and 15, I think we're over 15 now, companies to take forward this type of collective, collaborative DEI work. And I just want to say one thing about Dawn. I remember having a meeting with someone to discuss, and I was like, oh, we've got the ACT report over here, and we've got the Alliance over there. And wouldn't it be great if we could work together? And for whatever reason, at this meeting, we just had, well, there's this problem and this problem and this problem and this problem. And in my tiny little mind, I was like, oh, I was really hoping we could work together. And I said, well, let me just discuss it with Dawn anyway. And Dawn at this meeting, look, you don't even remember what I'm talking about, but this is what happened. And Dawn goes, literally, she's like, well, here's this solution and this solution and this solution and this solution. Let's just get it done. Dawn, I love you. Thank you for being here today. What do you got to say?
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. My 30-second spiel is, I got to get it in. I started at Intel as an administrative assistant 25 years ago, single mom, 2 kids. They paid for 2 college degrees. Now I'm the Chief Diversity Officer and a Vice President of Social Impact. Education, I was talking to Mr. Bernard Harris over here. Education can change your life. Someone who invests in you that last mile can change your life. I worked for a company that invested in me, and it changed my life. It changed my economic situation. I had 2 goals. One, work for a company that can provide my kids with healthcare, and work for a company where I can grow and send them to college. And they didn't have an option not to go to college. I didn't care where they went. My youngest, I used to always tell her, I don't care if you get a degree in basket weaving. And then she went to college and realized, she called me very devastated. They don't have basket weaving degrees there. And so, but they both made it through. I would say, what everyone has said here today about alliance work is just critically important. And Ruth probably remembers the time where we called it collective impact and shared value. We are all sharing the value of what our businesses bring to the table. And Una gave some data earlier. Tech alone has spent hundreds of millions of dollars to drive better outcomes in the D&I space. And it's very slow, and someone talked about it earlier. There's like zero movement. There is some movement, okay? It's just a little bit slow. And we, Intel, had made an announcement in 2015 to have a representative workforce by 2020, and we've fulfilled that 2 years ahead of time. And then it was like, okay, what are we going to do? To Una's point, I do have to give a plug to our CSR team. We have been reporting our diversity metrics in our CSR report for over 22 years. So it has been, something that we focus on, but we wanted to say what's next. A lot of people look at representation as just a checkbox. And for those that are in here and committed to this work, we know it's more than that. And I thought about, we're doing all this individually. Number one, we're probably overcompensating in some places where certain schools just get so much money where others don't. If we talk about education, what would it look like if we could get companies together, not to sign a pledge and say, yes, I do this, but to have very specific goals and metrics that we work on as companies. And so the Alliance for Global Inclusion was launched. It was launched with 5 mighty organizations: Intel, Dell, Snapchat, NTT Data, and NASDAQ. And we focused on leadership representation, bias in AI systems, especially HR AI systems, inclusive language, especially in coding, and then STEM education. And this is our 2nd year. We're up to 15 companies now. And to kind of describe the size, we have access to over 770,000 employees, $330 billion in revenue amongst these 15 companies that are involved, and over 2,200 locations. And it is not a fee. It's not a pay to play. You don't have to buy into it. We are coming together and bringing our resources together to solve these challenges so we can have a collective impact. And it's a shared value. It will benefit the whole if we can lean in together. So as we're talking about opportunities, not only in the education space, we see those same opportunities in business and how we can use our significant resources to make changes in our communities. So if you're interested, because I have to give a commercial for the Alliance, please go to allianceforglobalinclusion.com. You can figure out how to register. Again, this is not about an X dollar investment, but it could be, because we also are looking at how do we create an ecosystem when it comes to education solutions, where you bring multiple companies in a community to make a difference in that community. And if you could do it quicker versus Snapchat is partnering with X and Intel is partnering with Y. We're taking these 15 companies in, we're bringing our resources, and we can move on more quickly after we have established the groundwork and framework for what we're trying to accomplish.
I love Dawn. That's all I've got to say. Round of applause. And now Shirley, as we heard earlier from Sujit, normally you just say your name to get a round of applause. We'll let you say something first. Shirley, you are something of a legend. Is there any chance, in case we're surrounded by Gen Z people here at Snapple, that you could explain just a tiny bit about what this legend has achieved.
Oh, okay. I don't know if that's deserved, but in any case, what it means is I'm old. I was born and raised in Birmingham, Alabama, and I say that because you need to understand that the rest of my life has basically been shaped by that. And that is that I live at the nexus of STEM and social justice. And I have worked at the nexus of STEM and social justice for decades. AAAS has been a wonderful home base for that because the values of the organization have allowed us to do that kind of work. I have the questions of diversity, equity, and inclusion have permeated my life, from my family all the way through to the highest policy levels of government, where I served on the National Science Board as well as President Clinton's Committee of Advisors on Science and Technology. And everywhere I have gone, I've taken issues of diversity, equity, inclusion, and STEM with me. And that includes not only my work at AAAS, which is now quote unquote halftime, but also in the service roles that I play as members of boards or committees or what have you, because of the belief that I have that I think that is well established by research, well supported by research, that it matters who does science and who creates technology. It matters who is delivering healthcare. It matters a lot. And that if we can't get that right, we're not going to have quality science or inclusive technology, period. And that if we've got to be attentive to this. Just one other thing that I do want to say, this past weekend, I'm a regent at Morgan State in Baltimore. And this past weekend we had commencement. And one of the things that we regents get to do is to stand and shake hands of the graduates as they come across the stage. We had the graduate commencement on Thursday, and then we had the undergraduate commencement, which is always exciting. And I want to just say, there were between 700 and 800 undergraduates, okay? But the stadium was full. They brought everybody. Mother, father, sister, brother, aunt, grandmother, neighbor, etc. Because it isn't just about the individual who is graduating. It is about the families that are affected, their younger siblings seeing these students walk across the stage.
Mhm.
It is about the communities that now have expertise inside of the communities, credibility inside of the community. This is a much bigger issue than I think that we really need to talk about. And I would hope that in your conversations that are going forward, that we stop just focusing on that person, okay? It is so much bigger than that person. And I am concerned that a lot of the judicial rulings that we have, that what we're looking at is that person, as opposed to that family, that community, that city, that state, and what the people, that tribe, and what the people are actually bringing into that space. So I'm done.
So what I'm going to ask, and this time I'm literally, I won't chop your head off, but I will cut your mic off, right? I am literally going to, sorry, probably shouldn't have said that quite as, anyway, directly, I am going to ask now each panelist to please tell us what they see as the greatest challenge and the greatest opportunity. That literally means 30 seconds each for that. Will go in reverse. Well, whoever wants to start can start, because I'm very excited also about our next presentation coming up from Anita B, CEO and President here. Thank you, Brenda. We will get to you, and everyone else, you will also get to go to our very beautiful, this is to stop any of you slipping out of the room first, very beautiful executive center is waiting, where we are going to have a very nice lunch. So just hold on a second. In your briefest possible words, a challenge and an opportunity. Who would love to say? Thank you, Ruth. Over to
So
you.
I will start this by nodding to Brenda because it was Brenda that put the first $100,000 into the Last Mile Education Fund. And because she was seeing and hearing from HBCU presidents that there were these students who were just like so close and yet so far from the finish line. And those first 18 grants we funded through that $100,000, and that got us off the ground. I really believe I have been in this since 2001. I started my career at the Girl Scouts and have been looking at all of the different places, both in and out of public and informal and formal education and all the STEM talent pipeline. And we are actually doing a pretty good job of pushing more underrepresented students in. We are not doing a good job of getting them out. And this late stage problem of the last mile is the missing piece. And the other missing piece, I think, is we are not including socioeconomic status as a meaningful part of the DEI conversation. This is not something companies ask when they're recruiting and hiring. It's not truly accounted for. And in all of the ways that scholarships look for merit, those are actually conflating privilege with potential. And I think the greatest challenge we have, and also the greatest opportunity, is how are we going to make sure that the increasingly predominant group of talent we have in this country, more than half of K-12 kids are on free lunch in this country. This is a red flag. Every university in this country operates a food bank. Sit on that for a second. The United States of America, richest country in the world, every university is operating a food bank. How do we expect people to do something cognitively demanding like STEM while they are hungry? So we have got to close the gap for low-income students. We're going to push them into the system. It is a bait and switch to not push them all the way through.
Thank you. Should you?
So I think one of the greatest opportunities. Can you hear me?
Yes.
When you asked this question, the first thing I did was put it in ChatGPT. It got deleted after I posted it to Twitter because it was too truthful. And I'm just kidding, obviously. But the things that come to mind, actually, I'll give by way of quick example, this dress that I'm wearing today. My 7-year-old is here with me on this trip. And this morning he points to the buttons and they were silver. And he's like, oh, that looks like a Hershey's Kiss. And I was sort of like, oh, okay, thanks. I kind of was like running around. Driving over, I was like, why did he say? I was like, I guess it kind of does look like foil. And I was like, I don't think this dress has foil. I think these, and then I looked and I was like, oops, I didn't take off the foil from the dry cleaning and would have walked in here with just foil on the dress. And I give that example because it's important for us to listen to the unsuspecting sources in the room who might have the answer to the question, all right? And when we talk about diversifying the workforce, we still skip over the retention and the inclusion components of it, right? DEI has become synonymous with diversity and not anything else beyond that. So I think our greatest opportunity is humbling ourselves, that includes all of us, to listen to those in the room around us. And I think that's the power of the coalition, because you're literally bringing together folks who are committed to this work. It's not the commitment question. It is the listening and humbling, which brings me to the greatest challenge, which is what Sam said earlier about we like to break things and move quickly. And you cannot break people and move quickly without significant consequence. And I think it was Dawn talking about how long change takes place. I've said this a few times this year. This is the first year the United States has existed longer as a country than the institution of slavery. Okay? One more time. First year, the United States has existed longer as an institution than did the institution of slavery. What that means is that change is not quickly, right? But it doesn't mean it's not powerful. We would not be sitting in this room but for those efforts. And so I worry tremendously, especially with the increasing accessibility and advent of AI being able to solve all of the things, that in this world of DEI that we work on, it will be like, what's the fastest, quickest way, which I think is an underlying premise of white supremacist culture, is urgency, right? To do this thing, and it will actually be incredibly harmful. And the future state, my 7-year-old will be having, instead of a more advanced conversation on this, the same conversation. Like I pointed out the foil on the buttons 40 years ago, and we're still here talking about the same thing.
Thank you, Shiji. Sharon.
growing up in Birmingham, I had to become something I had never seen. And I think that in too many cases, kids are still not necessarily believing that they can do these things. But probably more importantly, their families need to be convinced, and their teachers and schools need to be convinced, so that the students actually have the opportunities that are provided. Now, that's, if we're talking about the numbers of different organizations that I'm connected with. NIMSY is one of the National Math Science Initiative, because of the fact that in too many cases, because the students are not seen as quote unquote science talent, they are not given the opportunity for rigorous coursework. So then they show up in college or university, and guess what people say? They can't do it. We've got to learn the difference between being smart and being underprepared. And in so many cases, we don't prepare the students for the rigor that they're going to face. And then we turn around and basically kick them to the curb, because in fact, we have made assumptions about what they can and cannot do. That, I think, assumptions are killing us, right? About who can do this work. Diversity, equity, and inclusion are in fact our competitive edge. This is what sets us apart from everybody, every other country in the world. This is how we will basically win the future. But not if we in fact don't understand that it is important that we provide opportunity as soon as we can, as early as we can, and continuously. And that is a major, major point. So it isn't just aligning you in the room. We've got to align across the entire pathway, and we've got to align the system. It is the system. It's not just one thing or the other thing. It is the system that in fact needs the focus.
And thank you. That I am going to give the last word to Dawn.
Okay, I can't do it in 30 seconds, but
No, we've got a collective fail here, don't worry. But it's gonna contribute to collective success.
there
Over
you
to
go.
you.
I'll do it in 32. Just really quickly, I think the challenge is for corporations is access to talent. If you look at the increase in state legislation potentially that is going to impact universities from admissions to curriculum, that is really concerning. The opportunity is to look for talent in other places. That's the upskilling, the reskilling, the CTEs. How do you get, especially in tech, your pipeline directly from high school into your companies? So I think those would be the two, and I did that in 32 seconds.
Oh, give it up for Dawn. Wow. Everybody, thank you so much.
I saw a lot of talent walking across that stage.
You did see a lot of talent walking
Okay,
across that
a
stage,
lot of talent.
and I am very sad to have to say goodbye to the talent on this sofa. But we do say goodbye now.